and linguistically sustaining STEM pedagogies using mixed reality simulations. The title is long. Looks very interesting. Okay, please join me to welcome Dr. Shim Liu.
Good morning, everyone, and thanks for this opportunity to share my work and my research team's work. And our work is about teacher education, language teacher education, and particularly teachers for multilingual learners. So our project has educational some context. So number of multilingual learners is rapidly growing in the US K-12 schools, while multilingual learners possess significant academic potential and socio-cultural assets. Their potentials and their assets have not been valued enough in US education, and they have not yet been adequately served in the schools. Also, most teachers in the US have received only limited preparation in working with multilingual learners. Especially in elementary education, many pre-service teachers feel less confident teaching STEM subject than reading and literacy. So to develop pre-service teachers' ability to teach STEM subjects to multilingual learners, many theoretical frameworks have been taught in teacher education programs, such as culturally sustaining pedagogies and language-based approach to content instruction. Despite their growing that understanding and knowledge and skills teaching multilingual learners, still pre-service teachers have had limited opportunity to actually apply and practice their knowledge and understanding until toward the end of teacher education program using field experience or practicum. So a group of scholars propose practice-based teacher education to provide more focused and targeted practice opportunity throughout the teacher education program. Then we have another, the research context of our study. So research in language learning and science learning show some shifts from traditional views to contemporary views of language and science learning. So traditional perspectives in language learning, particularly learning content area language, used to focus on teaching and learning vocabulary and grammar. So it really focuses on what language is. However, contemporary perspectives in language learning, they highlight language learning is learning through participation in social practice. So focus on what language does for specific purposes and language in use in a specific context. And also traditional perspectives in language learning really highlight learning vocabulary and learning grammar is prerequisite to learn some subject content. But contemporary perspectives highlight language proficiency is not a prerequisite for content learning, but an outcome of effective content learning. So while multilingual learners engage in content learning like science lessons or history lessons, they should use the language to participate in science sense making or communicating their thinking and their learning in content classrooms. And also in science learning, the traditional perspectives really focuses on learning canonical science knowledge defined by scientists and science educators, but contemporary perspectives really highlight science practices. So students, multilingual learners should be engaged in making sense of phenomena or problem solving in similar ways to how scientists and engineers engage in their professional work. And also in terms of multilingual learners, cultural resources and linguistic resources, traditional perspectives treat their prior knowledge and cultural assets just to identify alternative conceptions of science concepts, but contemporary perspectives really highlight students' cultural and linguistic resources, interests, and identities towards learning science. And here, the cultural knowledge is not just cultural background like history or their home language. It's more like a broad understanding of culture, like community and contemporary social scientific issues. So research has these shifts from traditional views to contemporary views in language learning and science learning has well documented in research. But in teacher education programs, these shifts have not been fully implemented. So many teacher training programs continue to operate under outdated assumptions based on the traditional perspectives in language learning and teaching. So our project really wanted to address these needs to provide more focused and targeted practice opportunities throughout teacher training program, specifically in teaching STEMs to multilingual learners, based on the contemporary views on language learning and teaching. So the purpose of our project is to develop pre-service teachers culturally and linguistically sustaining STEM pedagogies using mixed reality simulations. And today's presentation, I'm going to share some of our findings, how pre-service teachers, the pedagogies improved in a series of teaching simulations using our practice-based learning cycle. So we have two theoretical frameworks. So one theoretical framework informs the content for pre-service teachers' learning of culturally and linguistically sustaining STEM pedagogies. We adopted language-based approach to content instructions, 6 C's of support for scaffolding for multilingual learners. And this framework really reflects the contemporary views on language. And this framework identifies 6 C's of supports: connection, culture, code breaking, challenge, community and collaboration, and classroom interactions. And these 6 components are the key components for teachers to consider when they work with multilingual learners. And the title is pretty straightforward. So connections means connecting that content instruction to students' prior experience in their lives. And culture, incorporating cultural aspects and linguistic resources in their supports their multilingual learners' content learning. And code breaking, unpack language features and language functions required to engage in content learning. And challenge means maintains high academic rigor. So when teachers teach multilingual learners, they tend to rigor down and water down, simplify the content. But that's big no in multilingual learner education. So provides high support and high challenge classroom for multilingual learners. And community and collaboration provides some cooperative learning opportunities using small group work and many different grouping strategies. And classroom interactions to use interactional scaffolding move so that multilingual learners can learn the language while they are learning content. And we adapted the original 6 C's support to be more STEM specific. So we try to include some contemporary views on science learning, more science practice and science sense making in our framework.
She delivered the lecture this Friday.
Right. Luciana de Oliveira came to SNU and delivered her framework last week, right? This week, yeah, Monday, right? I co-presented with her, Korea TESOL. She was our the advisory board member for our project, so I worked with her for 2 years, and then she gave some feedback when we developed some the scoring rubric. I will show later. And another theoretical framework guides the design and organization of the pre-service teachers' learning and teaching. So we adapted the shift cycle, which is 5-phase process. So in prepare phase, pre-service teachers participate in learning module. So they learned the 6 C's of support and engage in some activities. And after that, they interact phase. They teach and interact avatar students in a simulated classroom, applying their learning of 6 C's. And then react phase, they watch their teaching video and then critically reflect on their teaching. And then review phase, they receive a mentor's feedback on their teaching. So they critically review the mentor's feedback on their teaching. And then reconsider phase, they refine and revise their lesson plans. to reteach the same lessons the next time. So these 5 phases is repeated 4 times, means baseline stage, module A stage, and module B stage, and final stage. So baseline, in prepare phase, they have some orientation. They learned the avatar students' characters, and they have basic introduction of 6 C's. And then teach avatar students, which they are just basic knowledge of how to work with diverse learners before they actually learn 6 C's of support. And then they reflect on their teaching and then reconsider their teaching to teach the same content. In module A, they start to learn these 4 C's of supports first, and then teach avatar students applying those 4 C's, and then engage in reflection, and then refine their teaching. In module B, they learned the remaining 2 C's of support, and then teach applying those 2 C's, and then reflect and prepare to reteach. And final stage, they review all 6 C's of support and implement all 6 C's support in their final teaching. And this cycle is implemented across 3 platforms, the Canvas and Avatar Lab and GoReact. So all learning content is delivered through the Canvas learning management system. It's all online. And their teaching takes place in the Avatar Lab. And they engage in their reflection, self-reflection, and reviewing the mentor's feedback in GoReact's video assessment tool. So I'm going to show some example. So Canvas, I think you're probably familiar with the learning management system. So we provide 4 modules. The orientation module, they learn how the simulation lab is working, and how the avatar students act. In module A, they actually learn the 4 C's first: connection, culture, challenge, community, and collaboration. And then module B, they learned more complex C's: code breaking and classroom interaction. And synthesis phase, they review all 6 C's of support. And to learn each C, we provide some descriptions, application strategies, application examples, application scenario, and they have to take self-check quiz. And there's a space brainstorm ideas for their own teaching avatar students. So this is example for connection. So we provide detailed description of definition of each C, and then provide lots of strategies. And application example, we show one video, some exemplary video applying culture, connection, or other C's. In application scenario, we have one, throughout all 6 C's, they see the same classroom scenario, teaching the same concept. Here, one teacher's classroom teaching the water cycle. So pre-service teachers can see in water cycle lesson how connection can be applied, how culture is applied, etc. And then self-check quiz and brainstorm ideas for their own teaching. In their teaching, avatar students, they have to teach the one science concept, Earth rotation and Earth revolution. And this is Avatar Lab. So the pre-service teachers will meet 5 avatar students through their laptop, or they can come in Avatar Lab, and we have big screen so that they can kind of play as a teacher role in standing and teaching these avatar students. And the focal avatar students is Dabi in the middle, and she's from Cambodia, speaking Khmer language, and she's at intermediate level of proficiency, English proficiency. And Mergen is the company provides this avatar lab, and it provides mixed reality simulation. So it combines AI-driven technology and human-led technology as well. So AI controls the avatar students' body language, facial expressions, and lip synchronization. And human simulation specialists actually have dialogue and interact and respond to the pre-service teachers who's teaching the avatar students. And we developed a scenario. So we really focus on, and we really hope our pre-service teachers understand science practices, not just science vocabulary or some providing just sentence frames when they work with multilingual learners. So we provide some data sets. So we encourage them to engage avatar students, actually analyze data and compare and contrast data sets and find the patterns and draw conclusions related to the Earth's rotation and Earth's revolution. So they teach this scenario 4 times throughout the learning cycle. And this is the scoring rubric we developed. So Lacey, the framework has very detailed guidelines in lesson planning, but they didn't develop that evaluation rubric, evaluation tool. So we developed this scoring rubric for each C and providing like 4 levels. And also we provide some examples, what illustrates some developing level, the STEM teaching for multilingual learners, and what exemplary level teaching looks like. And we provide 1 science lesson example and 1 math lesson example, because when we wrote our proposal, we were very ambitious. So we developed everything for science in 1 semester and the next semester for math, but it never happened. We just did all science for 2 years. Okay, and this is a GoReact platform. This is a video assessment platform. Recently, it's used for field experience and practicum a lot. So we recruited 3 cohorts of participants. And first cohort and second cohorts, we encourage them to watch their own video and engage in the self-reflection. But as we all know, it's kind of suffering to watch ourselves. So we assume that students may skip just watching their own video based on their memory and they complete their self-reflection. The third cohort, we run into this platform. And in this platform, while the video is played, while they watch their video, they have to click each marker. So we created marker of each C. And then when they find a moment, when they enact culture or code breaking or classroom interactions, they have to click this marker. So it's automatically marked on their video. And then they have to also provide some rationale, why it's culture and how, what kind of strategy they use and how it works. So this is and then in this platform, the same platform, the mentor provides feedback. So mentor can respond to students' comments, and also they mark some their enactment of the each C. And one highlight is student can mark not only the moment they applied each C, but also they mark each C for missed opportunities. So some moments they could have provide some support, but they didn't. And so it really promotes some critical reflection of their teaching. So those are our learning cycle and the 3 platforms we use. And we recruited 3 cohorts of pre-service teachers. And first and second cohorts, I recruited the pre-service teachers in my face-to-face ESOL course. And then third cohorts are recruited from some online course. And we collected some quantitative data and qualitative data. So we collected the surveys for students' self-assessment, and we hired the external evaluators. So they evaluate and scored students' teaching videos. And then qualitative data, we analyzed students, pre-service teachers' teaching videos, and we conducted some individual and focus group interviews. So these are some of the findings from our quantitative data from the scores, the video scores. So fortunately, we saw a lot of improvements. So blue bars are their baseline teaching, and then yellow bar is their final teaching. So you see some differences that shows the improvements. And this is all three cohorts. And we found greatest improvements in culture and code breaking. So I think this is very significant concepts for them. And we compared the blind scoring, the scored by external evaluators, and their self-report, self-assessment. So see, same trend, but self-report shows higher scores. So I think the pre-service teachers are pretty generous about their ability. But I think the self-report is still important because that reflects their improved the confidence in teaching multilingual learners. And we also compared first and second cohort and third cohort because they recruited from in-person class and online course. And same trend, but we see more differences, greater improvement in in-person classes, pre-service teachers. That's because when they meet Tuesday and Thursday, they share some ideas and strategies they use. And they also talk about what it works and what didn't work, and also lots of complaints as well. So I think this sharing space in in-person class helped to improvement of their pedagogies. And qualitative data, when we analyzed 3 vocal pre-service teachers' videos, we found they were able to deepen and extend their understanding and their teaching for multilingual learners. So this is the kind of developmental trajectory across 3 phases. We combined module A and B. So at the baseline stage, before they learned the 6 C's of support, pre-service teachers typically exhibit general and implicit understanding and teaching practices. And their engagement is marked by vague attempts and uncertainty. But while they are learning 6 C's of support in module A and B, their understanding of the pedagogies for multilingual learners become more specific and explicit. And at this stage, we begin to see pre-service teachers deepen and extend their pedagogies, their teaching, and they start to reconstitute multilingual learner pedagogies. So taking the concepts they have learned and reorganizing into more structured and intentional practices. And final teaching, the pre-service teachers demonstrate purposeful and more focused application. So their practices become more explicit and consistent and regular. They are not only refining their strategies, but also doing so with a sense of professional confidence. So this cycle illustrates a progression from initial uncertainty to confidence and informed implementation grounded in reflective and intentional pedagogy. So these are more examples what we mean by deepening their pedagogies for multilingual learners. So they were able to draw more attention to social scientific issues. So not only just focus on Davi's one focal students' culture, like what is the climate is the Cambodia, but they are getting more and more global cultural issues like global warming and other the current important issues. And they were able to raise awareness of disciplinary language, really beyond science vocabulary, but what are the language features and language functions to engage in sense-making and science practices, what language they need to use, investigate, what language they need to use to compare and contrast the data set, something like that. So they were able to closely integrate science sense-making and practices with disciplinary specific language use. And also what we mean by expanding culturally and linguistically sustaining STEM pedagogies, they were able to represent diverse culture, not just Cambodian culture, but more global issues. And they were able to use an increased array of resources and enact a variety of support. So if they have teach just one time the science lessons about rotation and Earth rotation and Earth revolution and teach something else in a next day lesson, they may use just one resource, like providing visual, and the next day providing a different visual. But here they have to teach the same lesson like 4 times. They have to come up with different strategies and multiple times. They have to, one day, one teaching, they have to use visual, and another day they have to find some interactive websites, and another day they have to like play a role with playing as a Earth and playing as a sun, something like that. So really pushes them to apply and use many different types of resources and support. So this is one student example. So in baseline teaching, she has some basic understanding how to connect and how to incorporate culture. So she asked the weather of Cambodia in baseline teaching is a good start, making an attempt to include some cultural aspect. But in module A, so she started to understand culture is more extended concept, not just one specific mentioning of one specific culture. So she tried to mention some global warming issue. In the final stage, she were able to expand the discussion of socio-scientific issue using multiple means of support, like interactive website and directly relevant examples. So multiple website for the Florida coastal areas, and we at that time we had a daylight saving recently. So she brought the daylight saving the contest as well. So these are some of the examples she used, and this is her interview data. So so these findings show the impact of our practice-based learning cycle using mixed reality simulation on pre-service teachers' STEM teaching for multilingual learners, particularly the impact of purposefully distributed multiple reteaching opportunities, not just providing simulation experience one time, but is purposely distributed in a well-designed learning cycle. And we found the pre-service teachers engaging in this practice-based learning cycle went beyond teaching science vocabulary or science fact-based science lessons. They were able to reach deeper awareness of disciplinary language use, closely related, integrated with science sense-making and practices. And they were able to extend their understanding of culturally and linguistically sustaining STEM practices from simply addressing a particular cultural reference or a particular multilingual learner's background to communities and socio-scientific issues or different parts of the world. However, we found some limitations. Despite heightened awareness and enactment of disciplinary language use, pre-service teachers have not reached appropriation of multilingualism and translanguaging. So very limited instances, they use students' home languages and other languages while they're teaching science concepts. And we found we still need ongoing discussions and efforts to sustain and expand these practice opportunities. Because one issue is sustainability. So simulation lab is pretty costly. So in order to reduce the costs to provide this experience to all teacher education program, we hope AI can develop some less expensive model for simulations. And also, it's our future task to create more realistic and diverse avatar students. And also, we have to be really cautious about using non-human avatars to lead to humanizing pedagogies. We don't want our students to treat these avatar students as just machine and be rude to these students. And we have one blog page showing some more examples through the video. So if you are interested in this blog, you can read it. And this project is supported by NSF, and the NSF required to include this slide And our research team, Doctors Jie Shin, Mingyang Kim, John Pico, and Melissa Limotrit Koplas are on our research team. And thanks for listening to the presentation.
Amazing presentation.
Oh,
Yes.
thank you.
With, highly innovative research, and we deeply appreciate your work. Okay, amazing. So, if you have any questions or comments, yes.
Thank you so much. I'm completely fascinated, and I think this tool is fantastic. And I have a question. I'm afraid it is a really dull question, but I'm really interested in the methodology. I'm completely convinced that this training leads to real results. I can see it, and it's. I don't doubt the effectiveness. However, I've wondered why you didn't include a control group, because perhaps I don't think that is the case. It's just an honest question, okay? But perhaps just interacting with the avatars could lead to a kind of a training effect over time, even without concentrating on the 6Cs, etc. We actually have some, it's not the same context, but some students in my face-to-face class and online class, they have some options to choose avatar teaching or peer teaching, because we couldn't have that actual students, the participants' logistic reason. Yeah. So it's we compared some avatar teaching and peer teaching, and we considered peer teaching as a control group, but peer teaching results were not very successful, but not because of the less improvement or anything. They were not very serious about teaching their friends. So it was not very comparable.
Yes.
Very interesting, thank you very much. A new thing for me. And my question would be, I understood that the cultural background can be also important for STEM education. And I wonder how, about your last point, how far this is relevant about the multilingual background, how far the multilingual background of the students or pupils is relevant for example, translanguaging. How can it be relevant and useful for STEM education? How do you see the language multilingualism? How can it be really useful for STEM education? Can be relevant in the classroom. Yeah.
So
or translanguaging, for example, how can it be utilized in the STEM education?
So when this is a very good question. So incorporating cultural aspects in STEM education, I think is more applicable, and students are more ready to include more cultural concept and they understand better. And however, the multilingualism and translanguaging is still, students are very difficult, feel very difficult. So what they did is only including the DABIs, the one focal students language to help them to code switch, like translanguaging just a little bit, and providing home language supports and providing some translated support, and also translated supports, and that's very there's a limitation, and so that's what our next project. So that's what the limitation, and something students were not able to reach. So that's one thing, our future task, to provide more strategies to learn translanguaging and help them to apply multilingualism in science. That's it.
And, comments or questions? Yeah.
In my seminar, I try to use some multilingual resources to the students. So we see, for example, the weather agency of each country has a different approach to climate changes. For example, in Japanese and German, the official weather agency of the country, which deals differently with the climate affairs. And this can be the students who can read German or other languages can report about these different approaches to the weather forecast and so. And then they can see what is interesting for this social aspect of the scientific facts that can be differently to culture, according to culture, and then they use their linguistic resources to report about these issues. Maybe this kind of background linguistic knowledge can be useful to approach scientific facts.
Yes. Okay, thank you. I think our science education colleagues need to listen to your presentation again. We have a very strong, Sanya Martin, she would be very pleased to hear your talk. And I will contact her and her research associates. Yes? Okay. All right, great. Thank you so much.
Dr. Stephanie Haberzetler. And the title of her presentation is on a usage-based approach to language acquisition research and its implications for language proficiency assessment. Okay, welcome. So maybe 30 minutes. Let's remaining.
Okay. So thank you so much for having me. I really feel honored, and I'm really keen to show you something we developed during a couple of years, 10 years, to be honest. It's now it's a long-term project funded by Daimler-Benz Foundation in Germany. Daimler-Benz Foundation wanted to foster language competence of children with migrational background, and in order to propose good language fostering programs, you have to do a good language assessment first, and this was the aim of our project. Okay, and many people had been involved in this project. Jörg Roche from the University of Munich and Giulio Pagagonis and myself, we were the principal investigators, but there were many other people from media, pedagogy, from psychology, from multimedia design universities. These are all these names in the first group. And I underlined Nicole Weidinger, LMU Munich, and Moiken Jessen, Universität Würzburg, another university in Bavaria. Okay, because with these two postdocs, I really did a lot of teamwork, and elements of their slides and their talks are integrated in my talk, and vice versa. So I really have to mention them here because it's really a teamwork, not work of my own. Okay, and I will show you also results from a second project I do with a little team in Saarland University, and this is what we call, Auftragsforschung, research done for somebody who is interested in a special issue, and this is the Ministry of Education in Saarland. And with this device, which I will present to you now, the Wishel app, we do the evaluation of special daycare centers with a focus on language fostering. And so these are all the people working in these two projects. And in a couple of months, finally, there will be book published by Springer, where we will explain our assessment tool in detail. Okay, so our approach to language assessment is characterized by a usage-based approach when it comes to our construct of language, of linguistic competence. We are not concerned with abstract grammatical structures. We are not concerned with morphosyntactic surface, with possible errors. And what we are concerned with is the competence to act with language, to do things with words. We are interested in how well a child can verbally carry out certain communicative intentions. I don't know why, but there should be a picture and it does not show up. Doesn't matter. Okay. Here it is. Okay. Because we are convinced that when ordinary people speak and listen, it is not for the sheer pleasure of manipulating syntactic form. The concern is with the meanings expressed. That does not, of course, imply, like Langacker puts it, that grammar is unimportant in language. It is, however, helpful to realize that grammar subserves meaning rather than being an end in itself. Yeah. For example, knowing the caused motion construction is important for the children in this scenery, where one little boy perhaps is telling the other boy, put the stone in the middle of our barrage or something like that, okay? And another really important aspect for our construct of linguistic competence is embodiment, okay? Language is grounded in human experience of the world, like Tyler puts it, and the way in which humans perceive and conceptualize it. Language reflects the human perceptual system and human understanding of the spatial, physical, social world we inhabit. And this is the concept of construal, which is the relationship between a speaker or hearer and a situation that he conceptualizes and portrays. There is no clear and direct connection between extralinguistic reality and language. And there are many different ways of expressing affect, the environment and context determine the construal. The glass may be half full or half empty, or it may be completely full because there's also air in the glass. And the way you conceptualize the extralinguistic world also depends on the grammaticalizations in your language, because our way to conceptualize what we see, what we observe is a little bit coined by the grammars, the languages we live in. This is really important for our construct as well, because our aim is to propose an assessment tool which is really fair also for multilingual children. Okay, so here are some examples of construal. Many of them are also relevant for our tool. Talking about agentive motion events can in a certain language you can have the possibility to really specify the manner of motion and to decide between move, run, walk, and sprint. In the German language, it is mandatory in a certain sense to choose the specification. In other languages, it's not. Another example for construal is taking a certain perspective. You can talk about the picture above the sofa, but you can also talk about the sofa below the picture. Depends on the context. Or this event, selling or buying of a car. It depends on information management. It depends on a referential movement in the discourse. You can formulate Peter bought the car from Maria, but you can also say Maria sold the car to Peter. It depends on the topic of your discourse. And all this has to be taken into account when evaluating a communicative process, of course. language production, and the language production. Okay, so since we are influenced by the language acquisition theory of Michael Tomasello, of the usage-based approach of Michael Tomasello, we are also influenced by construction grammar. So our concept of linguistic knowledge is not only knowledge of completely generalized or abstract rules, but knowing a holistic phrase may be really relevant and completely satisfying as well. And learning language means to learn holistic phrases, constructions, and to use them, to continue to use them, but also to generalize and arriving at more abstract constructions. So this is an example taken from Ellis and Ferreira Jr., and it fits well to our assessment tool, because in our assessment tool we focus on spatial language, on motion and positioning. So first, a little child only has one sentence which he's constantly using. Put it on the table, and he uses this. The child uses this phrase for 2 weeks, perhaps, and slowly, he starts to break it up, and we have a kind of pivot scheme where there is a slot where you can fill in different elements, and in the end, the children arrive at a rather abstract construction. Get me on the way and let me at the ball. And in fact, these very different sentences have their roots in the holistically memorized construction that children use at first. This is our idea of how language acquisition functions, and it is really very important to always keep in mind that we have this functionalist approach, that we are not interested in a formal system, like principles and parameters model or minimalist program. Even if me personally think we can combine these different theoretical approaches perfectly, there's no problem, but that is not the focus of my talk today. Comprehension and production of specific utterances in specific occasions of use is what the child has to learn. And this competence is what our language assessment tool has to measure. And this is much more difficult than to measure a linguistic competence on the surface level, because counting suffixes for plural marking is easy. It's mathematically easy to evaluate. Evaluating communication, the capacity to communicate is much more it's much more complicated. That's why we need 10 years to arrive at this application in the end. So here's the Wuschel app at a glance. We want to make testing as pleasant as possible for the children and elicit truly authentic language data. That's why we do this as part of a serious game that the children play on a tablet. And in line with the Wizard of Oz principle, the app on the tablet is controlled unobtrusively by the test leader app. And there's no special training needed to control this test administrator app, making the entire process very practical for daycare centers. And what's more is the data is not analyzed in the daycare centers themselves, but by the staff. They have other things to do, and they are also always overwhelmed by the everyday with playing with the children, etc. They should not lose too much time in order to learn a complicated system of counting something and doing the math. though this is what we do automatically with an algorithm. The AutoAnna, and this AutoAnna calculates the language competence profile based on many different characteristics and features. And the process is objective, it is reliable, and it is valid, and it will hopefully cost even less in the future if the audio recordings no longer have to be transcribed by humans. At the moment, they're still transcribed by humans, but our staff is working on an AI to make it possible to transcribe even child language automatically. So. The focus, as I said, is that we don't want to expose the child to an artificial and perhaps even unsettling test situation. We want the child to speak of their own accord, to be intrinsically motivated to talk. And we achieve this by immersing the child in an adventure story. And in this adventure story, the child acts as a helper. As a helper for this cute little dog, which is called Wuschel, and this is why the application is called the Wuschel app. And we have designed the adventure story in such a way that it works universally across cultures, because fairy tales have existed for ages. And in all parts of the world, we chose the genre of the fairy tale. Of course, everything is child-oriented. It's not scary in the end. The dragon is not killed, but he is shrunk. Okay. Yes, and there's another. Well, this is the main protagonist, but there's also an in a certain sense, an antagonist. This is Willy. It's a kind of a goblin, and he's always teasing Wuschel, but he also acts as a helper, and often he shows the child what Wuschel has to do afterwards, so that we can focus the child's interest on certain events that the child has to verbalize afterwards. And before constructing our tool, we did a lot of basic research, which was done also by a colleague in Basel, Heike Behrens, which is a well-known scientist for first language acquisition in German. And we did a lot of corpus research, analyzing authentic everyday language of children with caregivers, children with other children. And what we found was, doesn't surprise you, I think, children do not give full answers at once. Neither do adults, okay? But with children, it is even more normal, that you need to give some follow-up questions in order to help to put all the informations together. And even everyday communication, it is like this. It has to be done like that, like this as well in an assessment tool. If not, this assessment tool does not mimic authentic communication. Yes, and this is why we have a two-prompt system. In the beginning, we had a three-prompt system with a non-verbal prompt. The little dog only saying, "Oh, shall I do with the eyes?" Okay. Statistical analysis showed that we can get rid of the first non-verbal prompt, and in the new system there are only two verbal prompts, an explicit prompt and a less explicit prompt. And the other very important result of our corpus research was that talking about space, about motion, and about space takes a huge portion of everyday communication. And that's why we chose it for our tool, because of course we cannot focus on every functional domain there is. This is not possible. an assessment, a language assessment like that shall not be longer than 30 minutes because of concentration span of little children. So we had to focus on one functional domain, and this is spatial language. And spatial language is also very, very interesting on the typological level. And since we are interested in multilingualism, we also have to keep in mind that for children from Arabic or Arabic speaking or Turkish speaking background or Chinese speaking background, their way to conceptualize space is much different from the German way to conceptualize space. In learning to talk about space and motion in German is not only learning special words or prepositions, it's also learning to reconsider the whole thinking and seeing for a speaking process. To use an expression of Slovene. You have to learn how meanings are typically packaged in the second language. And in a certain sense, you have to emancipate yourself from L1 influenced conceptualization. And that's just one little example from Chinese. This is a doctoral student of mine. It's already published. Her study on acquisition of German by Chinese children of 3 to 5 years. And we have all these different prepositions in German for these different relations. And in Chinese, there is just shang for all of them. I think it's obvious that you have to learn to differentiate and to pay attention to certain details when speaking German. And well, another example on packaging meaning, in Chinese you have a double, in a certain sense, a double marking. Yeah, first you have I'm not Chinese speaking. I'm sorry. First you have this Wei, which means hello. Now I'm talking about a local relation. And then you have this particle, shang, and this is really where the meaning, the local meaning is located. Okay, it's a different kind of construction. And I just wanted to illustrate to you with this example that it is really not trivial to switch the system of spatial language when learning German. And of course, I think you all know this famous differentiation between satellite framed versus word framed languages of Talmi, that in some languages it's prototypical and there is not black and white, but also a lot of gray, of course, but there are these two prototypical languages. In one language, you have to if you want to verbalize manner of motion, you can do it, but you don't have it. But you don't have to, and it is a little bit complicated because you have to use a gerundium, for example. However, in German, a satellite framed language, you are obliged, in a certain sense, to code a manner of motion because it's coded in the verb stem itself, and the path, the direction, is coded in what is called the satellite. Okay. It's a different packaging of meaning, which results in a different focus of attention in different languages. This is what I already mentioned. What Slovin named thinking and seeing for speaking. And we know that. We know that in L2 acquisition, it is really a long process to switch from one system to another, to learn the exact semantics of a preposition, etc. So this is why it's really interesting to take the functional domain of spatial language for a language assessment tool, because you have to choose something which takes part in everyday life, but which you also have to choose something which is rather difficult, because you want to discern certain levels of linguistic competence with an assessment tool. If you choose a functional domain which is too easy, you will have ceiling effects, and it does not function for allocation decisions, for example, afterwards. How many time is left, Professor? I did not pay attention. Well, I can adjust. I don't want to use too much time.
5 minutes.
Okay. So. Okay, so for our auto-ana to function properly in the mathematical sense, we did a really complicated system of features and values for features. I can't go into detail here, but we tested different relations of figure and ground. We tested different discourse types because communicative competence also means to react in a pragmatically adequate way to a certain prompt. Sometimes the adequate reaction is a narration. Sometimes it's an instruction, and this is also something that we evaluate in our algorithm. And I will make a little demonstration of the app now. This is one scene taken from the serious game that the children play. And now I have to think about activating the audio. But I don't know how. Perhaps you can help me because I don't want to lose. It's not here, it's here. This is only for my notes. Because in everyday life, we also have many occasions to add some information, and it is not fair not to include this possibility in a language assessment test. However, in traditional language assessment tools, it is done. It's not. It's done like that. Normally you have one chance. And this is does not match real life. Okay. Okay. So we did a lot of testing and piloting, doing a validity study. We tested conversion validity via comparing the score of our auto-ana with the score of language acquisition research experts evaluating the same language production, and we were very satisfied with the result. And in the end, the auto-ana presents feedback on a rather general level concerning how the child is able to verbalize motion events, positioning. You have to jump through the grass, positioning events, you have to put the head in the big basket, localizations, the bottle is on the table. We do a checkup of the quality of the vocabulary, if it's variegated or not, of the semantics of the prepositions used by the children, and if of the discourse, of the adequacy of their reaction concerning discourse type. And if you want to, you can have a look at more specified features. I will not go into detail there. I will switch to two last aspects, showing that we are really able to catch this authentic communicative behavior. For example, we could show that the children in our validity study, they use more modal particles. These are little words in German to add some pragmatic nuancing to a sentence. Okay. And as expected, the children used more of these modal particles in instruction. And if you have a look at authentic communication, you can observe this as well. This was one result showing that their communicative behavior is really near to nature. Okay, and in our study in Saarland, we also could show a dialectal influence. With I in Saarlandic German, nearly every sentence starts with an I. In certain pragmatic contexts, and this is what the children do. And we could also show that some children have a certain preference for a certain construction in order to react to a certain prompt. There was one child which always did it like this. How do I get there? In dem du by and this really matches this construct of language competence in the usage-based approach or in the construction grammar approach of Adele Goldberg, for example. This is one citation I noted during a talk of her in Erlangen last year. Speakers tend to use familiar formulations over novel formulations that might be intended to express equivalent messages. Speakers prefer familiar formulations. We consider that to be a right way to use our language. Well, obviously, this child had this right way to do it, and it clenched to it for a certain time. Half year later, it was much more variegated. I can show you now because I don't have the time. And well, I think I will just stop now a little abruptly, but so perhaps we can have 2 or 3 minutes for discussion left.
Okay, thank you. So, you open. Yes.
Maybe I can start. Very impressed. Thank you very much for your presentation. This project and the thoughts that are the theory that is behind this developing a tool which is feasible, which is easy to handle, but which is like meaningful for the child and orientated to that. So it's really like thought from every perspective, I think. And what me convinced was also this giving the child a second chance to, because all this communication, it is like it's an oral communication, question answer, and they're not this full sentences or whatever. And the example you showed, it was like good. One could see that the child is developing its thoughts while speaking. For example, it was like durch das Feuer, and then the realization when the dog goes through the fire, it's burned. So über das Feuer. And the second one was du musst Schwung nehmen. It was exposition. Do you have other examples of these elaborations during the first and the second prompt? What were they like? Yeah, this was rather prototypical. However, sometimes the children were very competent and very precise, and they delivered the whole information, which was also precise enough in the first prompt. So then Wuschel was asking again. They got a little bit angry, but that's life, huh? If you have a little brother, he's doing the same. You will tell him something, and then the little brother will ask him, I already told you that. And this is what they do with Wuschel. So it still is okay. It still is okay. And we have nearly no dropouts. Huh? We have less than 2% of dropouts, children who don't have fun anymore and stop it. They all continue till the end. So the adventure study is adventurous enough, I think. And what is nice now in the Saarland study is that we are doing a test-retest design. and we administer this assessment tool after 6 months. And you can really observe the progress that children are making. For example, here, at the age of 4 years, 6 months, I can't activate now. The child says, in the basket is the head. The head is in the basket, which is okay, but it is not enough because it's in the big basket. Okay, you have to differentiate it. The little child at 4, 6 is not able to do that, and it does not fit to the prompt, because the prompt is, I can't show it now. The prompt is, what shall I do now? Prompting an instruction, and this is not an instruction. However, the auto-Anna will count what is done and what is done well. It's not a failure. Huh? However, half a year later, the child is much more competent. He has put the witch's head, nice German Kompositum, by the way. He has put the witch's head in the big basket. So now this is the perfect answer. This is really nice, and it's nice for the daycare center, for the pedagogical staff of the daycare center, because we can give them the transcripts of the children's language production. So if they are interested, they can have a closer look. They can also have a closer look to other features. If they are interested in plural suffixes or in verbal inflection, fine with me. They can do it. It's just that on auto-Anna does not count this kind of grammatical.
Mhm.
So they can see the progression. Yeah. Yeah.
Man kann irgendwie bei Liebe Daten dadurch man die Kompetenzen bei habe die Kompetenzen bei den Kindern angewendet. Ja. Genau. Ist das auch so konstruiert, dass längere Äußerungen gesammelt werden? Also,
Ja.
Weil, also wenn man also Hinblick auf also sprachliche Kompetenzen, also im Hinblick auf Konjunktionen untersuchen möchte, hatte ich so eine Erfahrung. Also man muss einfach so länger sprechen lassen. Und welche so Prompts, also welche Fragen haben Sie so ausgedacht?
Okay, shall I answer in English or in German? I can answer in English. So, okay. Okay. I have to admit that in this first visual app, talking about spatial relations, there is not really an occasion to develop a longer narration. However, we have a second app, visual 2, with 3 other functional domains: possession, which is typologically very interesting, by the way, a referential marking, definiteness, marking of definiteness or generic reference, and narrative competence. And in this second app, the children have the occasion to produce a longer story. There was a little kind of an accident, and then the doctor arrives, and then the child has to explain to the doctor what has happened. And there we have a couple of sentences, and there we can measure some narrative competence.
So etwas können wir für Erwachsene.
Yes. Yes, yeah. Please.
Very, very fascinating project. At the beginning, you said that one of the aim was to assess about potential problems which could arise in this later.
Yeah.
And do you have already data on this, or how do you plan to utilize to make use of the data you collected?
Well, at the moment in Saarland, we do in the near future, we will use it like a kind of a screening. We can use it as a like kind of a screening instrument. However, what we do not have norms, because we could not do till now Normierungsstudie. I don't know how to put it in English, because we should make a study with at least 3,000 children, different L1s with different age and so on, to have real norms. But at the moment we nevertheless do a kind of a screening, because we can identify, let's say, the 20% of the less confident and less capable children.
Mm-hmm.
If there's money for 20% of the children for a special additive language fostering, we can identify the children who are in need, who are the most in need of that.
Mm-hmm. This
is how it will be done in the near future in Saarland. Yeah. And if we are lucky, the North Rhine-Westphalia, one of the German federal states, the biggest one, will choose Wuschel as their tool for doing the preschool, assess the preschool assessment. Well, we are one of the competitors, and we wait for the decision of the government, and then we can collect many data.
Mm-hmm. When it comes to the children's L1,
yes,
some L1s might have satellite framework structures.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
and the other languages they might not.
Yes.
So I mean, these factors
yes.
influence
yes.
the picking up of the for example, Uber.
Yeah. I know.
Tours,
And in the future, we will take that into account. At the moment, our validation study, it was just 120 children. In our Saarland study, is just 200 children. Now we can begin to have groups of L1, of certain L1s, okay, Arabic or Turkish, and we can have a closer look to the effect, to the effect of the L1 entrenchment in a certain sense. But for the moment, we don't have enough data to quantify this effect. But we will have this data in the future. We want to consider them.
I think even I mean, as a Germanist, I think we have to. I mean, the Korean Germanists, we still have a lot of problems with the locating appropriate prepositions. Should I use out or should I use me in certain contexts?
But I'm happy to hear that, because this is another. This is just evidence that this is really, it's an important functional domain for everyday communication, but it is also a difficult domain, and you need something difficult to do language assessment. And of course, this is also super interesting for doing basic research. Of course.
Good. So if you don't have any other comments or questions, then okay, thank you so much.